The girl's name is Rael. When she was young, she had an extremely happy family, but in order to protect his company, her father was beaten to death by a K-ball family right in front of his wife and children. Rael wanted to avenge her father, but the K-ball family not only had wealth, they also had the backing of a political boss. A lawyer named Pyong wanted to help her, but he simply didn't have enough power to shake the status of the Chaebol family. On the contrary, he lost his job because of it. After the lawsuit failed, the lawyer could only take Rael overseas. On the day they said goodbye at the airport, to keep Rael from being hunted down, so Pyong gave her a new identity. Looking at her enemies on the airport screen, Rael recalled the sinister and mocking smile of her enemy. On the day her father died in the hospital, she made a vow to herself that she would return to find them and avenge her father. Since that day, Rael seemed to vanish from the world, and even her mother didn't know where she was. 13 years passed quickly, and the lawyer from back then had become a member of parliament. That day he received a package from the U.S. After opening it, he found a pile of cash and a note inside. After reading it, Pyong realized that the girl from back then had returned and was preparing her plan for revenge to reclaim everything she had lost. At that moment, Rael was stuck at the gate of the kindergarten. Today was her daughter's first day at school. The other parents were complaining because a big political figure was visiting the school. In contrast, they were treated unfairly. Rael stepped out of the car to check, only to unexpectedly see the enemy who had haunted her dreams for the past 13 years inside the school. That terrifying smile was like a sharp knife that making Rael impossible to breathe. Just then, the pain in her palm jolted her awake. She then saw the son-in-law of the Chaebol family among the crowd, and at the moment their eyes met, she knew her chance for revenge had come. For someone with a low status like Rael to approach such a powerful Chaebol family, then the shortest way was to capture his heart. The old man before her was none other than the Prime Minister of South Korea. He had used the most ruthless means to obtain his position. 13 years ago, for the benefit of his company, he had beaten Rael's father to death. So 15-year-old Rael was determined to avenge her father. After 13 years of silently suffering, Rael had changed her identity and re-entered the present world of this man once again. At the kindergarten's opening ceremony, Rael danced in a sparkling yellow dress, and the man mesmerized by her performance from the audience was none other than the son-in-law of her enemy. His name was Guillaume. In his daze, he felt as though Rael's eyes were staring directly at him. As the dance reached its climax, the fire inside Guillaume was ready to burst. Hearing the women behind him praise Rael's seductive figure, and glancing at the wife sitting beside him, whom he had long grown tired of, he felt his entire body heat up. Shortly after the performance ended, Rael stepped out of the hall, under the glittering night sky. As she walked past Guillaume, she intentionally gave him a flirtatious glance, and even dropped her bracelet. In his marriage, Guillaume and his wife were only together in name, so how could he resist the allure of a woman as beautiful as Rael? So he picked up the bracelet and hurried after her. But when he reached a dressing room and opened the door, he witnessed Rael in an intimate scene with her boyfriend, unaware that this was the first step in her revenge plan. After having done it with the man, Rael left the dressing room and casually made her way to the cocktail party to deliberately greeting Guillaume. Her indifferent expression was as if nothing had happened. As Guillaume picked his glass up, Rael intentionally brushed her hand against his, causing his heart to stir once again. Earlier that morning, on the parent-teacher meeting, Rael had purposely placed Guillaume's daughter's backpack beneath the feet of a woman named Dame Marie, a woman whom Sora openly disdained, so she was extremely dissatisfied with Sora, who also happened to be Guillaume's wife. When Damri opened the bag and found baby diapers inside, she checked the name and realized they belonged to Sora's daughter. Immediately Damri began mocking Sora, saying that Sora didn't know how to take care of her child. This remark was a direct slap in Sora's face. As the wife of the richest man in South Korea, that how could she tolerate such ridicule? Unexpectedly, it was Sora's daughter who became angry first. The little girl scratched the face of a boy who had been laughing at her, leaving him injured. Hearing the commotion, Sora's bodyguards outside the door rushed in immediately. But as a noblewoman herself, Dame Emery wasn't one to back down, and started a confrontation with Sora. Meanwhile, Rael, that standing on the side, was secretly smiling, as everything was going according to her plan. The situation then escalated, as Rael had anticipated, with the two noblewomen refusing to yield to each other. Sora demanded that Damri's son be expelled from the kindergarten, while Damri insisted that Sora apologize. This left the principal with a serious headache, as she couldn't afford to offend either side. Rael then stepped in as the mediator, suggesting a way to resolve the conflict between the two parents, which was to have a conversation with Sora's husband. Soon after Guillaume arrived at the kindergarten, the moment he saw Rael, he was immediately reminded of the scene he had accidentally witnessed during the opening ceremony, that Rael and her boyfriend making love. Distracted by those thoughts, he mindlessly agreed to the request to apologize to the other parent. Afterward, board, Rael and Guillaume began discussing their children's education. The man who had never personally picked up his child from school suddenly came that evening, but only to return the bracelet Rael had intentionally dropped at the party. Rael pretended to be overjoyed and said that the bracelet was a keepsake from her father. After thanking him, she eagerly tried to put it back on, but fumbled on purpose. Seeing the bracelet slip again and again, Guillaume stepped in to help her. In the moment his hand touched her skin, Guillaume seemed to feel his entire body heating up as the image of holding a glass of wine with her flashed through his mind once again. Meanwhile, Rael kept a calm expression on purpose because she knew that this man had completely taken the bait. The man with a faintly visible six-pack was now bowing his head to listen to the scolding of the chabol's wife, just because his earlier behavior had displeased her. Furious, she smashed her glass of wine and began to insult him viciously. Over the years, lacking her husband's love had made her temperament extremely irritable, so the bodyguard was well aware of the consequences of offending the mistress, so he just could only silently endure the abuse. Before leaving, she even warned him not to mention what had happened between the two of them. When Guillaume got home, Sora noticed he had picked up their child and immediately asked why he had done so today, as it was usually the secretary's job, but Guillaume criticized her, saying that when their daughter needed her, then she was never at home. Sora, after hearing that, feeling guilty, so she quickly took her daughter to her room and soothed her to sleep. That same day, Guillaume went again to pick up their daughter. After the bodyguard helped the little girl into the car, Guillaume stayed behind to discuss the truth of life with the teacher. As they sat down, Guillaume happened to notice an organ on the table. At this time he was quite surprised, as this instrument was very rare in Korea, and those who could play it were even rarer. Guillaume had always loved its sound. Unexpectedly, Rael mentioned that she knew how to play it. It was obvious she had deliberately learned it for him. As the music slowly filled the room, Guillaume closed his eyes and swayed to the melody. When he opened them again, he saw Rael standing in front of him and invite him to dance. She told him that the song was called The Forgotten Memory, and it was about a beggar who once wore the robes of an emperor. During that time, he suffered a head injury and lost his memory, so when he woke up, he spent the rest of his life believing he was the emperor. This song advises men to forget themselves and rediscover their own desires. Tango is a dance where the rhythm syncs with the heartbeat. Heart meets heart, that merging into one. Under Rael's guidance, Guillaume became increasingly immersed in it, forgetting his identity as one of the wealthiest tycoons in South Korea. Instead, he only thought of himself as a young artist experiencing the beginnings of love. After the dance, when Guillaume returned home, he felt deeply troubled and restless. Though his wife lay in his arms, his thoughts were consumed with Rael. Meanwhile, Rael entered a mysterious room filled with surveillance equipment and a wall covered in photographs. All of this was meticulously prepared for her revenge plan.